Okay. So that was pretty cool, right? So being able to build that in 3 years, they didn't just build it, the two of them, they hired a team and they had all these different ideas and they kept iterating on that product, right? And so one thing that they're also doing is you could see here, you guys could see my screen, right? So they also put out this response to COVID-19. And so what's interesting is organizations are turning to robots now to help with COVID. They can help, by keeping people safe at home, but also doing these temperature checks. Also, while there's a picture here, while people are wearing face masks, be able to make sure it's the same person. Like I went to the bank the other day, and it was so funny because I had this mask on, and like how many other times in the world can you go to a bank and ask for money, right, with a mask on? But what's interesting is burglars and facility incidents are on the rise. And so what they're doing is they're able to drive around if there's somebody that's not that's there that shouldn't be there, and just approach them and just telepresence in and say, hey, can I help you with something? Is there something that you need? And rather, if there's a human there and a burglar with a gun or something like that, they wouldn't want them to intervene. But in this case, they would just Cobalt would call the authorities and get people there. So it's just really, really interesting. They're also able to like go into to elevators, and their operations and finances is pretty robust. And so as you guys are responding to whatever problems that you thought of, and as you guys are trying to innovate and follow these steps or processes, I would say, like, make sure that you're building something robust, making sure that it's pandemic proof, make sure you're solving a problem, you're testing that hypothesis, receiving feedback, building and then iterating on that. And always in the end, find something that you are passionate about, that you want, a problem that you want to solve, because we are God's handiwork. He has created us to do good works and to impact this world, either on a security level or to fight things like poverty or help with education, help with the stimulus package and all the variety of other things, help the poor, help the sick, help the hurt, and really make an impact on this world for him. So that's my presentation. If you guys have questions or if you guys want to interact, please, feel free to go off mute, raise your hand. We'd love to take questions from you guys.
I think that you can also type your question into the chat if you want to, and we can call on you to ask the question, or we can just read it ourselves too. Is that right, John?
Yeah, totally. Just whatever feels most comfortable for you guys.
Okay.
Or if you don't have questions, I could tell you other stories too. I'll tell you this, and maybe it'll bring up questions. So I've got a friend. His name's Paul Lee. I know there's a Paul Lee on this call already. He was the son of a pastor. His parents actually took out a mortgage, second mortgage on their home just to pay for him to go to college. But he's really inquisitive, super duper smart. So he was from Southern California. He got into Stanford, and so he went there. He got his master's and undergrad in 4 years, then went to McKinsey Consulting, ended up going to Harvard Business School, and then after Harvard, had a lot of opportunities. Actually went to Google for 9 years, helped build Google.org, put fiber, high-speed internet in like rural India, helped with a lot of other things, and then identified. And while he was there, he still walking with the Lord, and he basically went on the board of IJM, International Justice Missions, so helping to stop childhood slavery around the world and abuse around the world. And at the time, so he identified some problems that he wanted to solve while at Google, while at IGM, and left to start a company. It was an AI and machine learning for internet forums, to be able to find, like you guys all have Facebook and Instagram and things like that, but he wanted to create an interest-based social network based on people's interest, and be able to extract experts and identify experts and help them to communicate with people more, and create groups around shared interests. And so he's done that, and he then identified this problem of most people or social interaction is around like different pictures and things like that, but this is a new way for people to interact with folks they didn't know. And so he's building that now. I invested. And one of the things that's interesting is like in both are Googlers, but in both Travis's case and Paul's case is like, they identified different areas of things that they wanted to approach and impact. And they both gave up, their careers in order to, really take low salaries and try and build something and grind away, because they wanted to impact that. And for you guys, I would encourage you, like whatever, you don't have jobs, many of you guys are students right now, but, those things that you, the problems that you guys identified, right? Like, make the culture more spiritual, attack mental health problems, like preventing spiritual attacks, right? Having more economic stability, right? More access to higher education, like whatever you're passionate about, whatever God puts in your heart, pray about that, think about that, decide to act and make an impact on that, because life is so short, and he's given you the tools and the gifts and the ability to be able to impact the world and create and innovate.
That's awesome. Julian, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. And this is while everyone else is thinking about their questions.
Okay.
You had talked about in your process for innovation, you had talked about socializing the idea,
Mm-hmm.
getting feedback. And I just wonder if you could comment about ways to do that, ways that you've seen that done well. Also, like how systematic does that kind of phase need to be? Are we talking about like turning to your wife and asking her for her opinion about some, like whatever you're thinking about, or going out on the street, or even more systematic? Give us a sense for the kinds of like what criteria would we use to determine what the best methods for soliciting that kind of feedback are?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say first, go to people that you trust, and people that will be honest with you. Like they could say like, hey, using groundhogs for security is a terrible idea, right? And then, getting that feedback is important, but also talking to industry experts. I think that's important as well. And most important is probably customers, people that would actually pay for it or use the product, and for them to tell you whether or not that's, that idea has legs or not. From a systematic approach, I actually think in order to keep us not accountable, but on track and motivated, it's good to actually create like a spreadsheet and say like, whether it's you or your team, like, hey, let's talk to X number of customers in this week, and then showing, like taking down notes and then trying to find themes from the feedback, whether or not it's a good idea, a bad idea, what would the workflow be, as you're refining your product or your process, to have like, like a diagram of like, okay, well, this is the first touch point to it. Like, okay, well, what happens if you see an intruder? What's going to happen? How does the user interface work? How does the face come up on the screen? When we have an articulating arm on this robot thing, like, what are we going to do to make sure people are safe? So things like that. Getting feedback is really important before you sink in a bunch of money or time in building something, because, like, what if this robot was a terrible idea? They don't want to, sink in like hundreds of thousands or even millions in something that's not going to work. You see it every day though, right? You hear about it every day, right? And so yeah, I think it's really important to have a systematic process. You don't have to use the same template, but just to create some way of getting feedback, capturing it, and then synthesizing it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I saw, Paul, you had a question. Where do you go to find venture investors? That's a great question. So Paul, you could talk to myself. You could talk to Mark or Justin. I don't know if JJ is on. There are Christian venture investors that are around. Praxis, who I think may have spoken with you guys. They have a group of a community of folks that we're part of that are interested in investing in people and ideas and products. And so I would, first start with us, talk to CFI as well, to see if there's somebody that, number one, will believe in you, number two, believe in the product that you're building, and then number three, I think somebody that's a domain expert that believes in you, that cares about the product is important too. You can find, you can find venture investors, but probably the first thing to do is talk to your friends and family, see if that's something that they, want to support you on. Raise that round first, and then you could go to what's called angel investors, which is high net worth individuals. I'm happy to come back if you think I'm not boring, and if you think it's worth your time. I'm happy to come back and talk about the different phases of funding a startup, if you like. And feel free to reach out. I think John and Ben will distribute our information afterwards. Cool. Paul Haas said, how did you first start investing in startups, and how did I find promising entrepreneurs? So I was first a entrepreneur myself, and then some of my friends were starting businesses as well, and so had done some it's called angel investing. So giving people like 10,000, 25,000, 50,000. But then I joined a Christian family office. This is a family office is where like high net worth individuals pool their money. There's some Wheaton guys that started that, and they're in Chicago. So started doing that's called institutional investing. So started being a venture capitalist by vocation, and then investing in folks that way. And then promising entrepreneurs, I would say, for all the hundreds and thousands of ideas that we see on a monthly or yearly basis, we'll invest in probably less than 1% of them. And so we get a lot of pitch decks and ideas, and this is from a venture capital perspective. Like, you'll find angels that are just domain experts that may be interested, that may give 10 or 25,000. We were putting to work like $500,000 checks, so we got to be a little bit more selective. But it's based on the person. Like the way it works is like, let's say I've invested in or mentored somebody, like a kid. Well, he was a kid at the time. I've been in youth ministry practically my whole life, and so had mentored kids in middle school and elementary school and high school. And so some of them have grown up to be really prominent. Like, one is like the head of autonomy at DoorDash, right? Several have gone off to make their own companies. And so it's really through your network. Somebody might say like, hey, I really enjoyed working with Julian. He invested in my prior company. Here's a friend that's starting a new company that's promising. And that's actually how I met Travis and Eric from Cobalt. A person that I invested in prior introduced us. And then like with Paul, he's one of my best friend's brother-in-laws. And you always have to worry about conflict of interest. You want to make sure you're evaluating the business idea and not just giving money to your buddy, right? And so I had a partner and he helped evaluate it. We have an investment committee and they went through that and we looked at the technology, the market, the team, the product itself, and things like that. But yeah, we invested in, 70 some odd companies, and, some have gone on to do really great things and some have gone to zero. But in the end, like for me personally, I want to support the founders. Obviously we're in it to help our investors get a good return, but I want to treat people with love and respect and ethically, and, be able to encourage them and build them up. So hopefully the people that I've worked with see that and then refer, other people to me. So it's about reputation, I would say. James, you asked, what do you do when the solution to the problem you are addressing is not apparent and you don't come up with any good ideas? That's a great, great question. I would say you start talking to friends. You start talking to people that experience that problem as well, and just start trying to identify themes, and through that and collaboration, maybe you're able to find a solution to it. James, is there a particular problem that you're trying to address? Maybe the folks on the line can help brainstorm.
I'm just thinking, like, a lot of the things that people mentioned in the chat were just like very like bringing higher education and reducing unemployment and like stopping human trafficking, which just seemed like very audacious. And it seems like if we had a clear solution, people probably would have done it by now.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like how kind of these unsurmountable tasks almost, where it seems like there's no way you can conquer it. Like, where do you start and what do you deem as like, oh, this actually might work, and oh, that's a groundhog idea that's never going to work.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that term. It's a groundhog idea. Well, like, I think every problem can be solved. And I think with enough time, energy, talent, and, I think money comes into play there. But if you get people aligned to be able to solve those problems, and I think they can be done. And it's not the easy problems that we want to see solved, but it's those big, hairy, audacious problems, right? And so I'm actually kicking around an idea about trying to help, like kids in the inner city that have been in generations of poverty to be able to, escape the current situations and be able to access higher education in an affordable way, but be able to provide for the least of these. And so I'm talking to some professors in AI and machine learning. They've developed this idea of being able to pick. Don't quote me on this. This is just how they separate the world into winners and losers, and be able to look at the behaviors of winners and then apply them to losers. So what they're saying is, like, it's easy for somebody who's well educated from a family that's well educated with a lot of money to go to college, right? Super easy, because they've got role models that have done it before. They have the means to send them to college, right? But what about the least of these kids that are born into generations of poverty? Maybe they're born in like sub-Saharan Africa and they don't even have food or shelter, right? How do they have a dream to create a company or stop human trafficking or help feed people? So it's basically taking behaviors of people that have overcome those things, and then identifying that and helping train these quote unquote losers, people that are in these underprivileged or under-resourced states, to become winners, right? So that's their secular term of things, but I hope you guys understand it and don't, and get my meaning. But it's those entrepreneurs with those audacious ideas that recognize those problems, that have the heart in order to build something and make an impact that we want to meet. And so, that's a great question. It's a great comment, James. And if you come up with ideas for this, then definitely want to talk to you. But I want to talk to you no matter what. So you don't have to have an idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Ben, you asked what spiritual challenges do you face as an entrepreneur? It's a great question. how can those of us who are non-entrepreneurs support Christians who want to make a difference as redemptive entrepreneurs? That's really great. So the spiritual challenges folks face as entrepreneurs is, I think, support. There's also temptations in the world to fake it till you make it, until you make it. So Theranos, if you've known that story, is a great example of this. So Theranos was founded by a woman named Elizabeth Holmes while she was an undergrad at Stanford. The idea was to basically take a prick of the finger, have a small, minute amount of blood, and be able to read that in and be able to, get a blood test. And she said, "Oh, we've got this, idea, and there's science behind it." But she was a great con artist. She raised over $1 billion, had this insane governing board, and just pulled the wool over their eyes. These are like former senators or like secretaries of state and heads of corporations, but just pretty much lied and cheated them. And, a lot of entrepreneurs may succumb to like the idea of, oh, I need to be successful. I need to make it. I have all this, I raised this money. I need to build something of value, right? If I don't do that, I'm not valuable. And so some people take the dark path and fake it and lie and cheat and steal, and they're unethical. Some people treat people poorly. And so I've not really struggled with that. Like I would rather, be a failure in the world's eyes than treat somebody poorly. But, there's things like that, that people run into. And so keeping those people accountable that struggle with that, and money or success, keeping them accountable. There's other people, entrepreneurship can be very lonely. So just, mentoring them or pouring love into them. It might be financial. So maybe you've got these world-changing entrepreneurs that need some support, maybe helping them that way or providing connections. So various ways to support entrepreneurs. Do you guys all understand the idea of redemptive entrepreneurship? Yeah. Ben, you want to speak about that a little bit?
So yeah, I think, how many of you actually, just show of hands, how many of you came to the Praxis event that we hosted in February? So, and I can't see many of you because your cameras aren't on, but it looks like many of you. So many of you understand what we're talking about, but basically it means that the framework, like if we're approaching our entrepreneurial venture and asking how do we be Christians and do this, and if the answer to that is well, we just do it ethically, then the idea of redemptive entrepreneurship would say that actually that's not quite sufficient. It's good to be ethical, but you can be ethical and still not introduce new kingdom value into the world. And so the redemptive entrepreneurship is really just it's a way of saying we actually need to go a little bit further in the way that we design our ventures, in the kinds of problems that we try to solve, and so on. If being a Christian in the context of being an entrepreneur is important to what we're trying to do.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and Praxis is an amazing, it's an amazing organization and program. I've been a Praxis mentor before, and I've sat on panels with folks from Andreessen Horowitz, and different other organizations, and it's awesome to see believers in the marketplace living out their faith, both from the funding side as well as the entrepreneurship side. It's those people that have the right heart, the right problems that they're solving, the right solutions that we want to be able to invest in. But honestly, we just want to invest in you as people, as believers, as students, because you may not create the next billion-dollar thing. It's okay, right? You have worth in who you are through Christ. And so I just want to encourage you guys, like, no matter what you do, whether it's a billion-dollar company or, you know, it's a nonprofit that's serving the poor, just do something that the Lord has really put in your heart, and, you know, make sure that, you know, it's sustainable. Make sure that you can, you know, make an impact on the world, and make sure it's from God, right? Like, we've got a lot of ideas. We're like, oh, I'm going to do that thing, right? Make sure that you're talking to godly leaders, maybe your professors, your pastors, your parents, your family, your friends, and they say like, hey, yeah, I think you would be awesome at that. I think you have the gifts to invest your time and your talent and your treasure in that. Okay, there's 2 more questions. I do want to be sensitive to your time. So Given Tonry, that's an awesome name, Given Tonry. So sometimes a failure is inevitable in the process of realizing our ideas. Based on your experience and knowledge, how can we fail well? That's a great question. So let's say you're a startup, you've raised some money. Let's see, have any of my companies done this before? They have not, but I have heard it in the past. So if you have raised money from investors and you've identified that, like, you just can't solve this problem, or you're not the right person, and like, you've identified like it's not gonna happen, you know, make that decision and say to them, and just be honest along the way, like, hey, I failed, but let me give you back your money, or whatever you invested in, right? Or, you know, like, I'm not able to do this. I'm gonna shut it down, but, you know, the next thing I build, I'm gonna give you the first opportunity to look at it. Or, you know, it's interesting because you really have to be humble, right? First, to fail, to be able to admit, like, yeah, I failed, right? You've got to be a good communicator, and you've got to learn those lessons and communicate those lessons to others, so that hopefully they don't fail. But, you know, I talked about what separates winners from losers. The winners actually fail. The winners fail, but they fail fast. So they're able to follow this process and iterate. So failing fast means not just like you got it the first time, or winning doesn't mean you got it the first time. It's failing, like, it's forming a hypothesis and solution, receiving feedback, and they say, no, that's terrible. Or building a product and, like, hey, I think this is going to work, and people say, no, that's like a groundhog idea, right? But they're able to not just fail fast, but also iterate on that. So, like, you know, you fell off your bike, you get back on it right away. So one of the things that they said was, that separates winners from losers is winners fail fast. They take what worked and not throw the whole thing away, but they take what worked and iterate upon that, so that the things that worked, they continue on. The things that didn't work, they're tweaking, and then eventually they will find something that does work. And of course, there's you know, brains and resources, but it's really that desire to see that problem be solved and find a solution and keep trying. And between the tries, minimizing the amount of time between. So if you fail at something, try again, but don't wait too long. And if you know that you failed, that you can't do it, you're not the right person, then just communicate it, be humble, and then, you know, move on. A lot of times I see people, not a lot of times, but sometimes I see people dwell on their failures. We all fail. We all fail. The most successful person in the world has failed thousands of times before. And so just remember that. And, like, even King David, right? A guy that was said to be a man after God's own heart, right? Look at what he had done, right? A murderer, an adulterer, right? A liar. But ultimately, it's your repentance And failure and success is not in the world's eyes, but it's God's eyes. And so if we could come to him, on bended knee in repentance, he could help us, restore us, right? So hopefully that answered it. And then Paul, I'll just make this the last question. Venture investment industry today is heavily technology focused. Given that Wheaton is a liberal arts school, there is a high probability of non-tech entrepreneurship among our students. How is non-tech entrepreneurship similar or different from tech entrepreneurship? If you have invested in non-tech startups, can you share some of these stories? Yeah, that's great. So I totally agree with you. So I'm a technology investor. I have invested in non-tech stuff. Actually, my education platform is a brick and mortar, tutoring center that we work with kids. So I've invested my time and my own money in that. I've invested in a social entrepreneurship he's trying to help with too high of rent and did something happen? Oh, my screen sharing stopped, right?
I just stopped sharing so we could see you better.
Oh, got it. Okay. He's trying to solve social problems and help people overcrowding and overpriced rent. So I have invested in things like that. And then if I invested, can I share one of those stories? Yeah. So his name is Peregrine. He's got an awesome name. And he's still trying to figure out something called product market fit, building a product that will help solve this overcrowding. And we'll still see what it is. But in that case, I invested in him as a founder and a person, not just the product, but it was the problem that he's solving. So it was the person and the problem that he was solving. That's why I invested. And then I'll take, given only if we have time. Speaking of using the right language, winners versus losers, how do you code switch as a Christian? What language, metaphor, words have been helpful and what has not been helpful? Can you explain that when you say code switch? I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. I have an idea of what you mean, but I don't want to. So Given, can you unmute your mic and because you got the
right
There we go.
find the window. Hi. Kind of borrowing the language from critical race theory, I guess. But then what I mean by code switching is how have you communicated? Yeah, maybe as a Christian, you cannot use Christianese and everything. How have you
Got it.
How do you handle conversations as a Christian in the marketplace?
Got it. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. I try not to use Christianese even when I'm speaking to Christians, right? I try and because there's maybe somebody there that's like, I don't know what these people are saying. There might be a non-believer that's like, I have no clue what these Christians are saying. It's like their own language, right? I'm not part of that club, right? And maybe I went to a church and they spoke like, oh, that's so blessing. Oh yeah, things like that, right? I actually use the word blessing, but I try and be a Christian, or I am a Christian in the workplace, in the marketplace, when I talk to believers or non-believers, at church and not at church, in front of my family, in front of my kids. I don't swear. I treat people with respect. I pray for non-believers as well. If somebody's swearing, I don't say, hey, don't swear and things like that. But I make sure I'm honest and I'm true to who I am and try to be pleasing to the Lord in and out of business. I've never gone to a Christian school. Oh, you know what? I take that back. I did take a systematic theology class at Trinity once, but all the other schools I went to were secular schools. Grew up through the public school system. even when I'm speaking at, at Northwestern, University of Illinois, University of Chicago, like I don't swear. Like people swear in class all the time, right? When I speak to entrepreneurs, I try and treat them with respect, right? And so, I don't really try or feel like I need to code switch. And anything I say, I want it to be something that I would say in front of my kids, that they're 12, 10, and 8, and everything I invest in, I want it to be open, that they would be proud of me. So I won't invest in like weapons or marijuana, or I actually don't want to invest in video games, because I feel like, well, when I was a kid, I was a latchkey kid. I played a lot of video games, like, because I didn't have other stuff to do. And I think you could spend time, nothing against video games. It's not like they're non-Christian or whatever, but, I feel like sometimes they could promote violence, or like, you could be reading or doing other things that are more productive. So so I try not to code switch. I'm sure at some point, you do, like when you'll say certain things at church that you won't say elsewhere. Like, I won't say, if there's somebody that's a non-believer, I probably won't say like, oh, praise the Lord or praise God, or like, man, that's awesome. Like that's like God did that, right? But I will try and slip in, like, they know I'm a Christian. They know who I am and what I stand for. And that's actually one of the things about 11 Tribes is, like, we want to invest in believers that are impacting the world, but we will also invest in non-believers if we can make an impact on them, and we could influence outcome and the ability to impact the world in a positive manner. And hopefully along that way, they come to know Christ. And just, with each moment that you're interacting with anybody, we hope that they're either moving more towards Christ or away from him. And we hope to, through our interaction with people, through our investing in people and our mentoring them, that they're moving towards Christ, and not just in a individual manner, but in a redemptive manner, that they're influencing the rest of the world to point to Christ. Was that helpful, Given?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope that helped. I could come up with some metaphors, but like, I do come up with like a lot of metaphors and funny things, and like the groundhog thing, I don't know. I thought it was funny. And I think, James, you've coined that term now, groundhog idea. Cool. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're 10 minutes over, so I just want to thank you all. Thank you to Ben and to John for putting this together. Thanks for the opportunity of meeting you guys. We will distribute these slides and your email. I see that Mark is on and Justin's on too. So they're fantastic brothers, co-investors, co-founders, and just like, I love them and their families. They've been so supportive to me, and it's an awesome partnership. And we want to partner with you, the students, and with Wheaton College, and really transform this world through Christ and make an impact on others around us. So thank you.
Awesome. I'm sure John will say goodbye to everyone here in just a second, but I also want to add my thanks. Thanks for engaging. I'm talking to the students right now. Thanks for bringing your great questions and for being ready to learn. And I also want to say thank you to Julian. Thanks so much for your time and your generosity. You really showed your generosity with the stories that you shared and the time that you've given. And many of you didn't see this, but before you got on at the beginning of the webinar, he made a point of introducing me and John to his kids, which was just really just touching too. So thanks so much, Julian. Thanks, Mark and Justin, for joining as well.
Thanks. And I just have one ask. If you could let John know, you could do it anonymous. Oh, you don't like, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe we could have a form. Just give us feedback. What resonated with you, or what was boring? Any type of feedback, both positive and negative. We want that because we, like I said, like, we are all failures, right? We want to become, successful and winners. And through that iterative feedback process is how we all get better. So thank you.
And on that note, tomorrow morning you'll be getting a Google form, for your participants to just kind of share your thoughts on how you believe the event went, maybe provide some feedback, and that data will help Ben and Julian and myself think about how to do events like this in the future. Again, we just want to thank you so much for attending and, for your engagement. Even though we can't, see everyone like face to face, I really feel like this has been a really active and really engaging webinar. And I just want to thank you for the energy and just level of engagement. But yeah, that is all that we have for our end. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I just want to thank you guys again for being a part of this.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Have
right.
a good evening.
Guys.
Be safe.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so